Hi, folks. Welcome to the Alix Mayer Show. And today's guest, I was trying not to fangirl him too much, but it's Senator Johnson. And you probably don't know this, but he started out as CEO of a plastics company, and he became a senator in Wisconsin about 15 years ago. He's incredibly impressive. And when COVID started, he took on the cause of medical freedom and vaccine safety when he had known nothing about the issue before. And he's incredibly impressive. He is on our team. He's fighting for us. And I think you're going to love what he has to say about mandates and the prospects, especially for blue states like California in the future. So tune in, and I'd love to hear from you at the end of the episode. The Alix Mayer Show is sponsored by Mish International Gold and Silver Specialists since 1963. When you need to defend your health from the regulatory state, you support this podcast and the dedicated people at Free Now Foundation. But when you need to defend your savings from the state's monetary system, you contact the dedicated people at Mish International. Mish International is a family-owned business, and it offers true expertise, integrity, reliability, and fair pricing of gold and silver. Visit their website at mishinternational.com. That's MISH international.com. They're very good friends of mine, and I trust them with my life. Senator Ron Johnson, thank you so much for coming to the Alix Mayer Show today. It's my great honor and pleasure to have you as a guest.
Well, thanks for having me on. Thanks for all you do.
My pleasure. I don't know if you know much about what I do, but I run Free Now Foundation. It's California's leading medical freedom legal nonprofit, and we're trying to end the mandates in California and beyond.
Hey, what you're doing is a lot what I'm trying to do is just trying to convey information to people, tell them the truth so they have conformed consent.
We are very aligned. So because I was vaccine disabled and brain damaged 30 years ago, it really gives me hope and gives a lot of people hope to see someone like you stepping up and into this cause to defend medical freedom, informed choice, and I don't call it informed consent, I call it informed choice, and really take on this issue of vaccine safety. And we can't thank you enough. I'm going to try not to fangirl you too much in this interview, but I'm a huge fan of yours.
Well, I'm a fan of yours. I'm also a fan of Aaron Series. I woke up this morning and got a link to a clip where he interviewed Dr. Russell Saraski, a neurologist. Apparently, I've never seen the doctor on Fox News, but he contributes. But he's coming out basically saying his first day of residency, he was seeing vaccine injuries. As a neurologist having to, react to these emergency room situations, it was obvious to him. It was obvious to the doctors in which he served. None of them ever filled out VAERS reports. They all widely acknowledge that these things are vaccine injuries. It just doesn't get caught up in the, in the coding. It doesn't get reported, and so it's easy for the people in the agencies and big pharma to just say, "Oh, well, there is no evidence of vaccine injuries," even though these doctors absolutely know. So this was quite honestly, I'm talking about it because I think it was a groundbreaking interview. I hope to talk to him later this afternoon because, let's face it, he's putting his career on the line. The doctors that speak out are taking huge risks with their reputation, with their medical license. And I'm so grateful for those doctors who stepped forward over the last few years in some of my hearings, some of my panels. And now Dr. Saraski is another one of those courageous heroes.
I'll say I can't wait to see that interview. And yeah, I think the federal government goes by the adage, absence of evidence is evidence of absence, right? So if they're not recording it in VAERS, it doesn't exist. And then even at that point, if it is in VAERS, they say that it's not causation. And those records are unproven. But I want to go back to an opening question for you. My favorite question to ask people from our lockdown period was, what was your first tell that there was something wrong with the COVID narrative? I think everybody really wants to know the answer to that. And then I want to know after that, what prompted you to start taking action?
Well, first of all, I was chairman of Homeland Security Governmental Affairs. Not exactly the committee you would think would be holding hearings on things like early treatment or anything to do with the pandemic. But the fact of the matter, the pandemic was going to actually impact our homeland, our preparedness, that type of thing. So I held my first hearing in February with Scott Gottlieb and found out that we don't manufacture our drugs, not the precursor chemicals, not the active pharmaceutical ingredients. So that was a national security risk right there. But as COVID progressed, I think by May, we already had John Ioannidis talking about the analysis of the Princess Cruise, where to me, it definitely calmed me down about the pandemic. I was as freaked out as anybody when you saw people in moon suits and doctors dying in China. That was concerning. But once we had the the perfect research project, the Princess Cruise, where John Ioannidis basically said, listen, if you're elderly or you have certain comorbidities, you need to be careful with COVID. But for the rest of us, maybe it'll be a bad flu, but we ought to be able to survive that. So I held a hearing in May of 2020 trying to calm everybody down. But part of that hearing was I had Dr. Pierre Corey, who had an affiliation with the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and he was successfully treating patients in the emergency room with corticosteroids. And so he testified about that in that hearing. And of course, he was savaged by colleagues. I mean, there's no way you can treat this. About 8 or 9 weeks later, there was a study on dexamethasone that said, yeah, corticosteroids actually do work. I wish I would have held hearings earlier. Finally held them in November and December of 2020 with Peter McCulloch and Harvey Risch on hydroxychloroquine. Pierre Corey came back in December about ivermectin. But in terms of questioning what was going wrong, I was in contact with Novartis. They were the ones that provided, I think, 30 million tablets of hydroxychloroquine to our national stockpile. And there's a logjam. Those weren't being distributed anywhere. I'm going, what's pulling off here? I was in touch with the CEO of Novartis on a pretty regular basis, and he was all excited about the trials they're having. They were going to be released in late April or early May about the effectiveness of hydroxychloroquine for early treatment. All of a sudden, by about the end of April, early May, he just went dark. I never heard from him, never talked to him since. And it just seems like that was the point in time where someone made the decision, we're not going to worry about early treatment. We're not going to investigate any kind of new drugs or generic drugs or anything else. We're going to put all of our eggs in one basket. It's going to be called the COVID vaccine, mRNA technology. We've got this platform that we've just been itching to use. And I was highly suspicious of it ever since that moment, because it made no sense to me. Why aren't we putting an Operation Warp Speed in effect for treatment? And by the way, that goes with all diseases. I mean, you're well aware of this. You've read things like Dissolving Illusions and Turtles All the Way Down, and now Aaron Siri's excellent book, Vaccines, Amen. Most of these infection diseases, we'd pretty well conquered them before any vaccine ever hit the market. It was called improved sanitation. We stopped living in squalor. Better sanitation, better water. I mean, all those types of things. That's what really defeated most of these diseases. The remaining cases, we should have had massive efforts on how to treat them so people wouldn't die. And we had that exact same model then for COVID. Ignore treatment, put all of our eggs in the vaccine basket, and ignore the possibility of vaccine or injection injuries. Just claim that this is safe, it's effective. Ask no questions. Don't educate our medical establishment. So again, none of it ever made sense to me whatsoever, and that's what certainly opened my eyes and certainly made me receptive to the fact of childhood vaccine injuries as well.
That makes a lot of sense. So your tell is just this inconsistency with other infections where we treat them, and COVID was different. We weren't going to treat it. And can you tell our audience why they wouldn't allow ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine on the market, and why steroids and dexamethasone were not going to be used, even though they showed promise?
Well, for the first 8 months, the only way you could get the COVID injection, it's not a vaccine, so sometimes I slip it. It's a COVID injection. It's literally gene therapy, but that was made available through an emergency use authorization. You cannot get an emergency use authorization if there's a treatment for the disease, and so they had to make sure that there was no treatment for the disease. I mean, it made no sense when the FDA came out with their tweet, come on, y'all, you're not a horse, you're not a cow, calling ivermectin a horse paste. No, it was a Nobel Prize winning drug. It saved, I don't know how many millions from river blindness. It's an antiparasitic, and that same type of antiparasitic action also worked with COVID. We're finding out it might be working for cancers. I mean, these are God-given molecules that, for example, penicillin is kind of the same way. I mean, that was sort of happenstance that drug was developed, and look at how many lives it saved. Why would we turn our back on something that, again, Nobel Award prize winner, very safe. I mean, I've looked at the various reports on that, way safer than the COVID injections or remdesivir, and yet the FDA tanked that. I mean, there's only one explanation. Again, they're corrupt, and they're doing the bidding of Pfizer and Moderna, probably Johnson & Johnson in terms of rushing these injections out to the market. Don't worry about the safety profile. Let's deny some of the deaths we're seeing in our trials. Let's doctor these things as best as possible. Pull the wool over. I don't think they're pulling the wool over the regulators' eyes, but certainly the eyes of the American public.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember that because there were 4 things that needed to happen to get an EUA drug on the market or vaccine. And one of them was you couldn't have the 4 A's, the approved alternative and adequate drug. You couldn't have that on the market. So that's why they had to quash hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, even though they were working. So that was your big tell. And what was the moment where you decided that you personally needed to start taking action through the committees that you were chairing at the time? Was it a person like Ken Rutgers or something else?
Well, again, I was doing this in 2020 because it simply didn't make sense to me. And it didn't make sense to me that like the HELP committee, the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension, I mean, why weren't those committees actually working on this? So I took the responsibility on my own shoulders. And again, I was trying to calm people down. It's like, don't freak out about this. We don't have to shut down our economy. Be careful if you're elderly, if you have certain comorbidities, but the rest of us, we need to carry on with our lives. You simply can't shut down the economy. So again, that's back in May of 2020. And again, it made no sense in terms of lack of treatment. I mean, for the NIH to come out and basically say, there is no treatment for this. If you get COVID, go home, be afraid, maybe take Tylenol, which, by the way, is probably a more dangerous drug than ivermectin. But take Tylenol and just hope you don't get so sick that you have to get admitted to a hospital where we will pump remdesivir. By the way, nurses in those wards would call it run, death is near, because they knew it would knock out their kidneys. So, we'll inject you with remdesivir, which we make a lot of money on. And we'll ventilate you knowing that 80 to 90% of you will never come off the vent, not alive. So again, none of this stuff made sense. Nobody else was doing it. I just felt I just had the responsibility to expose the truth to people. And then I finally met Ken Rutgers, though, when he reached out to me because of my advocacy for getting people the information they need on the COVID injection. His wife, Cheryl, was vaccine injured. And he asked me what I could do. And I said, well, I mean, I can give you the platform. I've held hearings. I've held public events. We can hold a public event. But understand, you'll be attacked for this. He was willing to do it. And we did in Milwaukee. We had Dran Bresson there. We had a couple other, Manny DeGarry was there. And that's where I met Ken Rutgers and the vaccine injured community, which it's one of the main reasons I ran for a third term. I wasn't going to do that, but nobody else in 2022, by 2022 was advocating for the vaccine injured, and I simply couldn't abandon them. So I ran for a third term and won a very narrow race.
Wow, I did not know that's why you ran for a third term. God bless you. Thank you so much for doing that. So do you think they were manufacturing deaths in the hospital to make COVID look more scary to push the vaccine agenda?
Well, they certainly coded everybody they possibly could with COVID, whether you had it or not. Again, the PCR test, I mean, it's well known. They cycled that way too many times. They were getting all kinds of false positives on that, I'm sure. So they pumped up the numbers. Again, they wanted to create fear to force everybody to believe that they had to get their solution, which was the injection. Hospitals, of course, were incentivized. They got paid more because of these massive $1 trillion COVID relief bills that we were passing here in Congress with no control on them. So again, we just threw money at the problem. And people are smart. They're business people. So you made a lot more money treating a COVID patient than you did for somebody else. So basically shutting down hospitals for other diseases, stop doing diagnostics on other tests, and just focus all on COVID because it made a lot more money. Made a lot of money pumping remdesivir in people's veins. So I think, and it's not a very kind thing to say, but hospitals became killing fields. People's rights were completely violated. Basically, you took a loved one to the hospital, you're almost signing their life away, knowing you'd probably never be able to see them again. You couldn't go in the room and comfort them as they were dying even. It's pretty sick. It's a story that is not told the way it should be told in the mainstream media, but I've heard it time and time and time again, and these are horrible stories to hear. I mean, what happened inside our hospitals is literally outrageous.
I agree. It turned normally loving and caring medical professionals into monsters because of those incentives. And we're about to file a lawsuit to end the practice of hospital homicide, actually. So thank you for recognizing that's a huge problem. And I think it still is. I think that's carried over. Do you still see those practices happening in hospitals now?
Yeah, I fear that's the truth because, once you get used to taking away people's freedom, once you literally can provide treatment without their informed consent, you keep doing it, particularly when it's to the benefit of your hospital organization. We've lost a lot by having doctors cease to be independent contractors running their own practice, and now they're all basically hired hands of hospitals. With the legal framework we have, the best way to make sure that you don't get sued or minimize your risk of being sued is follow the protocols that your hospital association tells you to follow, which are basically imposed on you by these federal health agencies who are pretty well captured and corrupted by big pharma. So, I mean, that's the way this is flowing now, where the doctor should be at the absolute top of the treatment pyramid. The doctor should be in charge in consultation with their patients. Instead, the doctors are being crushed at the bottom of the treatment paradigm or pyramid, and it's regulators who are really ruling the roost here. And and that just flows through the hospital associations and all those protocols. And of course, the protocols, hospitals, whether they're nonprofit or not, are money-making operations, right? If they're a nonprofit, the CEO is just getting millions and millions of dollars in salary. So they're all run for money. And you're going to structure protocols to help your hospital make more money. And that's what's happening right now. And unfortunately, I think there are far too many doctors who just stay silent. But I understand why they stay silent. I mean, you take a look at the doctors that came out and testified in my hearings or my public events, they were destroyed by the medical profession. They had their licenses revoked. Some of them can't practice medicine, even though they're fabulous doctors. Again, it doesn't take too many hangings in the public square by a dictator to bring the rest of the population under control. And that was pretty well true, I think, for doctors and other medical professionals during COVID, and is still true today.
I agree. Is that the solution, that doctors need to come out en masse and protest and say that, we're the ones in charge, we're the ultimate decision makers for our patients, and that's how it should be?
Yeah, I would love to see doctors move back into independent practices, not be a hired hands, have some association with hospitals. They need to do that, but they need to be the ones in charge. They need to be the ones calling the shots, not the hospital medical director or the hospital CEO, some of whom are not even doctors, and certainly not these corrupt federal agencies. They don't practice medicine, doctors do. And they have the primary responsibility to their patients. So that's one of the things that needs to happen, among many others.
Would that be accomplished through a federal bill or another way?
I mean, it's pretty impossible to pass federal bills, and the ones we pass are generally pretty awful anyway because they're put together in a very sloppy and unprofessional way. So, again, I'm a big believer in the private sector. I'm a big believer in let's focus on smaller solutions at the local level, and I think we're starting to see it. You're seeing more and more doctors just getting disgusted with the system, moving into independent practice. Not accepting insurance, just doing cash. I mean, here's an example. Rick Scott had a great hearing in his aging committee. He brought in a surgeon from Oklahoma who's been operating a cash-only surgical center for about 10 years. Their prices for surgery, and they're first-class surgeons because they got great surgeons who, again, they're sick of the current paradigm. They've switched over to independent practice here. Their surgeries are 10% the cost of hospital surgeries. That is the potential if we were to bring consumers back into the equation here. The biggest problem we have in our healthcare system, or another problem, but the one driving costs, is we've taken consumerism out of healthcare. We have third-party payer systems. Nobody knows what anything costs. Every incentive in our current healthcare system is to increase costs because everybody's making a percentage. I mean, Obamacare set the maximum insurance companies can make at 15%. 85%'s got to be paid for medical expenses. So if an insurance company wants to make more dollars in profit, The only thing you can do is, reimburse more medical fees. So they have no problem having a $10,000 surgery cost $15,000 because they're making 15% on that. The analogy is a realtor. If you've got a house that's worth $200,000, you have no problem if you've got a sucker for a buyer that's willing to pay $500,000 because you're going to make a percentage off of that. And that's what we have. You don't even have, in that case, that sucker who's a buyer is actually the actual consumer. He's making a bad decision. In our healthcare system, patients aren't making that decision. The third-party payer is. And the third-party payer is an insurance company that's happy to pay a higher price because they're making a cut off of it. And every provider along the chain is making a percentage, and there's, again, no incentives to reduce costs. Every incentive is to increase costs throughout our healthcare industry.
So it just needs to be completely redone so that the incentives align with the outcomes we want, and the perverse incentives are erased. And easier said than done, right?
Yes, but the way to do it is not probably federal law, unless you just federal law to give people the freedom to do these things. Remember, under Obamacare, as an individual, you can't choose different insurance policies. They're now prescribed by the federal government. So again, if you get through things like health savings accounts, where you actually put patients in charge of being the actual buyer of the service, that you don't need to pass a law for price transparency. The customers, the patients would demand to know, what's this going to cost? Now, I was listening to an earlier, now Maha has some good videos out. I think the second one is on PBMs. And you're talking about compounding pharmacies, and they've got an example of a pharmacy that just went to pure cash. Now, they lost about 70% of their customers because all those people use insurance, but of the remaining customers, the ones paying cash, first of all, they saved all kinds of money. And the pharmacy was able to double their profits with only 30% of their customers. So the drug levels were way lower, just like those surgical expenses were lower. And then the provider, in this case, the pharmacy actually made more money. And so you have to, so how could that be? Well, it's because the whole insurance industry is rigged. The insurance own the PBMs. The hospital associations are working with the insurers as well. I mean, it's just a completely rigged and broken and corrupt system.
Truly it is. I'm part of a health share program, and I'm technically a cash pay, so it's shocking how much lower the rate is for different things than it would be if I were paying through insurance. It's absolutely shocking and very distressing. I'm glad it's on your radar as something to fix. I want to move forward to this incredible hearing you had last fall. You had Dr. Toby Rogers, you had Aaron Seary, and I think a guy named Dr. Scott. And it looked like Blumenthal was co-chairing that hearing with you. That was an incredibly exciting hearing. You were looking at the safety of the children's vaccination schedule. But that hearing, I think you exposed a lot of stuff, and Senator Blumenthal didn't seem like he needed to be there. Can you tell us more about that from a behind-the-scenes perspective?
Well, I think Senator Blumenthal is either before that hearing or an earlier hearing, Voice of the Vaccine Injured. He went out to the press and hoped that nobody would watch the hearing. He didn't think it was worthy of anybody's attention. And by the way, I think these have been excellent hearings. They've revealed all kinds of good information for the American public. The mainstream media's approach to it, they'll send an MSNBC reporter that's already written a story, a hit piece on me before the hearing even occurs. They publish that one hit piece, and then they just ignore the actual hearing. So the voice of the vaccine injured were never heard by the American people unless you have social media and you got some of the clips. But in that hearing that you're talking about, Dr. Scott, I'm just asking him simple questions. I mean, so what do you know about the mRNA? Are you pretty up to speed with how the mRNA injection works? And he said, oh yeah, I am. And I just started asking him a series of questions which prove he doesn't have a clue. I mean, he didn't realize that the mRNA biodistributes all over the body. He really didn't understand the mechanism for it. So again, it was time after time he just proved himself to be completely ignorant, and yet he was the expert witness brought on by my ranking member, Senator Blumenthal, who again is basically trying to blow up the hearing.
He really was. I watched that hearing 3 times, and I loved your questioning of Dr. Scott, and I was astounded that he didn't realize that mRNA goes into your cells and has your cells become spike protein manufacturing facilities. He didn't know. And it sounded like he thought that mRNA just stayed in the arm as if, our arms catch COVID and not the rest of the body. And it was just astounding, your line of questioning on him.
He also didn't realize that it's not true mRNA. It's modified RNA. And true mRNA degrades in the body very quickly, which is why they thought they had to encapsulate a nanoparticle, which is designed to permeate difficult to permeate barriers, which is why it biodistributes. But the modified mRNA is modified not to be destroyed by the body, which is why we're now finding it circulating in the body. We don't know how long it'll stay, but we already know some studies, it's been in the body for years.
That's absolutely right. So do you think that hearing had some bearing on the ACIP changes to the children's vaccination schedule that occurred after that, the Hep B, the COVID shots, and then early this year with the executive order from Trump? My feeling is that hearing did contribute to the knowledge base that allowed that to happen. What do you think?
Well, I'd like to think so, but really, I think what's happening with the ACIP is, Bobby Kennedy got in charge. He got rid of all the other members of that board that had obvious conflicts of interest to big pharma, to vaccine manufacturers, and he's put them with more independent thinking individuals. So people like Dr. Malone and Dr. Levy and a bunch of other good people, Kurt Milhoen. Some of these, all three of those people have testified either in my hearings or in my public events on these things. So they're just good people, and they've got an open mind, and they're not, just pushing the narrative that these things are all safe and effective, and don't show me any evidence that proves otherwise. So, but no, I think what has happened since 2020, 2021, when we've had these hearings, we've had these events, more and more, at least a few doctors have come out and utilized their position to try and inform the public. It's one of the reasons there's such a low uptake in boosters of the mRNA, and there's such resistance to have more mRNA, and that's a good thing, because I think it's a dangerous platform. It might have promise in certain situations, but not for mass vaccination.
I agree. What about self-amplifying mRNA that they're talking about using in the future? Wouldn't secondhand smoke laws prevent a product like that from even coming to the market?
Yeah, it's pretty scary when you start hearing about aerosolized vaccines and that type of thing. Again, we just have to educate the public, and they need to make their voices loud and clear, because we're up against powerful interests here. I mean, big pharma, they capture the media with all their ad money. They capture Congress with donations. They are in charge here, and we are up against powerful forces. So, ordinary citizens who know what pulling off, you've got to contact your members of Congress. You've got to contact your senators. You've got to contact your state and local officials as well. The word has to get out, because we're still in the minority here.
Isn't that the truth? Well, and that brings me to a question about the new children's vaccine schedule, down from 17 vaccines to 11 and more than 90 doses, down to about half of that. But so first of all, what do you think of that? And do you foresee any other changes to the schedule, or do you want to see any other changes to the schedule right now?
Well, first of all, I'm opposed to all vaccine mandates. Again, what we should be focusing on is treatment. And if you read Dissolving Illusions, if you read Vaccines on Men, you'll realize that most of these infectious diseases have been conquered with improved sanitation, cleaner water, that type of thing. And let's eradicate these things by being able to treat them properly, so that if you have outbreaks, we can quash those outbreaks quicker than trying to vaccinate populations. And the interview with Dr. Shirasky will be very revealing to people, because a lot of these injuries that he witnessed, it's just one vaccine. We've kind of equated the fact that back when I was growing up, there were maybe 3 vaccines. Now that's up to as many as 80. Okay, almost 30 in just the first year of life, and so the narrative is safe and effective. Well, except for maybe we give too many all at once. You may be injured from one vaccine, and we don't know, because we haven't conducted the studies. I mean, that's where Bobby Kennedy was absolutely correct. Aaron Siri has deposed people. I mean, we've never had a true placebo, blind controlled study on any of the vaccines on the childhood schedule. So we simply don't know. But what we do know is, for example, Harvard, and they talk about this in this interview with Aaron Siri and Dr. Sharaski. Harvard did a study and pretty well revealed that less than 1% of vaccine injuries are actually reported through these surveillance systems, less than 1%. So if you take a look at, for example, the VAERS system with COVID vaccine injuries or injection injuries, but we're up to approaching, I think, somewhere around 39,000 worldwide. Now, I think because people have heard about VAERS, I think there probably is a higher reporting percentage for those, but if it's only 10%, the 39,000, that could balloon to 390,000 deaths. If it's 1%, that's 3.9 million. And there are plenty of people that have estimates of how many people the vaccine or the COVID injection killed. I don't know. Again, it's very difficult to do the science because we purposely have these surveillance systems not to give us that answer.
That's right. Yeah, and the underreporting factor is huge and basically unknown. And it's a big swag, scientific wild-ass guess. So let me ask you about these states that are trying to Maha-proof their states and Trump-proof their states. There's a Western Health Alliance. There's a Northeastern State Alliance. There's a Governor's Alliance. What do you think of what they're doing and going against the CDC recommended schedule now?
My guess is eventually they will fail because I think the Maha movement is a powerful movement that's not going away. Now, the powers to be, the people in charge right now are going to do everything they can to destroy it. So I am somewhat distraught that even some of the doctors that were on my panels together, I mean, there's infighting between those things. But again, I think that's how the Maha movement can be destroyed, is if we have a bunch of infighting. No two people agree on everything, but I think we need to stick together in terms of the overall approach to what we're trying to do here. Eat healthier, have informed consent, look for treatment, try and stay healthy so you don't have to have treatment, try and find exactly what's causing chronic diseases, things like autism, but all these other autoimmune diseases. And I just have to quick point out, it boggles my mind. I'm not a doctor. It's a disadvantage I have in this argument. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical researcher. But it's so obvious to me when you're using vaccines that are doing what? Well, they're impacting your immune system, right? So many of these chronic illnesses have to do with some kind of dysregulation of your immune system. So are we honestly to believe that, okay, we're so smart that we're designing all these vaccines? We have to add these adjuvants like aluminum and thimerosal and mercury. I mean, all the things we've added because just a dead virus and attenuated virus doesn't get the attention of your immune system well enough. So we got to add a bunch of crap to it, which we know are toxic to the body, right? But we're so smart that we're going to produce these vaccines and they're only going to do good. They're only beneficial. So the impact on your immune system is all positive, and we completely ignore any possibility that when we're screwing around with people's immune system, that maybe we're doing harm. Maybe we're doing something harmful to the immune system. Again, it's so obvious to me, which is why I've quickly come to the conclusion that I'm going to be very wary of any vaccine that I possibly would ever consider giving myself or one of my kids or grandkids.
Absolutely. Senator Johnson, do you think in clinical trials they should be testing IgG antibodies not only to the infection they're trying to target, but also to self to test to see if they're perhaps causing autoimmunity, and maybe also be testing IgA antibodies? Because that's how we test for autoimmune diseases, after all. It's the same antibodies created by vaccines. Yeah,
we actually need to design tests that will detect adverse events, and we don't have that right now. Again, you listen to Aaron Siri and his deposition of Stanley Plotkin. Very revealing. It's 9 hours. It's a pretty interesting 9 hours, quite honestly. But in that interview, and this is what Bobby Kennedy was revealing, we don't adequately test these things. We have very underpowered. A couple hundred kids. We track adverse events for sometimes as little as a week. Probably most 30 days or something. We test them against a previous vaccine. And the analogy I always use, it's like, well, we want to test the safety of hemlock, so let's test it against, I don't know, how about arsenic? and when they kill the same number of people, go, look, that's every bit as safe as arsenic. So that's in effect what we're doing with vaccine testing. We're testing them against either something that doesn't have the attenuated virus in, but it's got the adjuvant in it, it's got the Lunum in it, or it's got, it's a prior vaccine that wasn't adequately tested either. I mean, it is literally insane. If you read Aaron's series, and that's, there are a lot of good books, but that's kind of the seminal work from my standpoint. You read his Vaccines Amen, and your eyes will be opened in terms of the corruption of this entire enterprise of vaccines.
I agree. That's a fantastic book. Let me go back to some state issues. So not only are they defying the new CDC vaccine schedule and implementing mandates in California is particularly bad. Most of my audience knows that in California, students have to get more than 30 doses of 10 vaccines, and they are going, the Department of Public Health is going school by school now, and I call them the goon squads. They're going and pulling all the remaining medical exemptions, and any medical exemptions that even make it to the DPH for consideration are overturned. So we are a de facto mandatory state for vaccination, and California is sticking to this 90-dose schedule from the CDC from 2025. And now California has joined this WHO alliance called GORN, the Global Outbreak and Alert Response Network, and other blue states are starting to join. Like I've even heard that Wisconsin might join next. What do you think of all this? Are blue states going to get away with this? Is this a medical secession? And are they going to be successful?
Well, we can hope that people like you and others, Aaron Siri, that are broadcasting this to the public, enough people will learn, and we can battle back against those types of mandates. I guess the good news is you can move from the state. I know California is a beautiful state. No way I'd live there. Just tax rates, just you take a look at the Palisades fire. Completely preventable, but it happened because of awful governance. I mean, just grotesque negligence. And here's another example in terms of these mandates. So there's a reason why you have an exodus from some of these blue states into red states. I just hope that people exiting blue states don't bring blue state politics and start polluting the red states, because we need those states to remain conservative so that we maintain our freedom.
We know so many of our listeners understand the relationship between health freedom and our personal and economic freedoms. It's the same principle. If you're one of our audience who's concerned about inflation, concerned about paper asset uncertainties, and the ongoing monetary crises, you may have already started accumulating gold and silver or are considering doing so. There's no gold dealer we know better poised to help the freedom community than Mish International of Menlo Park, California. I'm one of their many happy customers who've bought and sold silver or gold, whether at their showroom or securely delivered via their carrier. They are true veterans. They're honest, fair, reliable, and so knowledgeable regarding all the choices of gold and silver bars and coins to help you choose the products that fit your goals and your worldview. The principal, Robert Mish, is world-renowned for his expertise in rare coins as well. Contact Robert Mish at the number below, or visit his website at mishinternational.com. That's MISH international.com to learn more about this notable company. So let me go to a couple, hopefully quicker questions on some investigations you've been doing. So you've been looking at these 10 child deaths that are in VAERS that were linked to the COVID shots. Is there any update on that?
I'm getting highly frustrated with HHS and FDA. I'm not getting information from them. We got a 8 million page document dump, and that's what it was. That's pretty overwhelming to go through. You need to know what you're looking for, so you have proper search terms. So that's keeping my staff very busy. I'd much rather had productions of more targeted requests on some of the issues I'm looking for. Because let's face it, HHS and the agencies, they kind of know who the people are involved. They know what documents would be more responsive to my request. But again, 8 million page document dump. But I wrote the secretary, Director Hogue, and also Director and Dr. Prasad about that exact case. I've bugged them a number of times. Actually bugged Dr. Hogue again today during our hearing on rare disease. And I'm just not getting information from them. So it's very disappointing. I know Bobby Kennedy is absolutely dedicated to radical transparency, but people in his agencies are not.
It's quite an uphill battle. I can't imagine the brick walls he's running into behind the scenes, but I think he's doing everything humanly possible within those confines. I'm going to ask you another probably frustrating question. I think he watched my measles presentation about how I believe the measles cases were used to manipulate a phrase out of Kennedy's mouth in support of the MMR vaccine. And we, as Free Now Foundation, we actually engaged Dr. James Lyons Weiler into a study of the measles genome that was hitting West Texas. And he did find some irregularities, but the CDC wouldn't release the 2025 cases and the sequences associated with those. And you ended up escalating that to the CDC. Do we have any word on that or any progress on that?
Wish I could report some, but no. Again, that's the problem. I mean, this is getting very frustrating. I spoke to Secretary Kennedy at the State of the Union and asked him, Bobby, I know you're unbelievably busy, but when you've got a moment, I'd like to sit down and talk with you for about an hour so that we can so I can determine what is happening within your agency.
That would be outstanding. Yeah, to the extent that the public can help with that too, we stand ready. A couple more questions. As chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, do you have any upcoming probes or investigations that you can share right now?
Well, again, Senator Scott and his aging committee, again, you would think this would be the HELP committee, but it wasn't. So this is Rare Disease Week, I think, or month or day, whatever. So he held a hearing on rare diseases. It was an excellent hearing today. And we had two doctors. One doctor's daughter is suffering from one of these rare diseases. I literally can't pronounce them, so I'm not going to try. The other doctor was involved in one. Both of these diseases have treatments available. The one doctor's daughter got this. It's a one-time type of therapy, and she is living beyond her life expectancy already. It's working. The other doctor's ataxia, I think, is the name of the disease, and they've repurposed a drug, reformulated it. It's the drug they repurposed is like 30 years old. It's proved it's safe. This is working. It is producing like 50 to 70% better outcomes. And yet the FDA has given both of these drugs what they call the complete resolution letter. Again, the no letter. And just under completely bogus terms. One of them that said, well, there are like cracks in the floor of the manufacturing facility, so there's some manufacturing issues. The other one just said, well, you don't have real world data. So you got all kinds of real world like patients and people begging the FDA, please let us have the right to use these drugs. So what's going to happen, unless we can get this reversed, is these patients will not have these therapies and these drugs available to them within a few months. And so, I read the testimony this morning, and I was enraged by it. I went to the hearing running pretty hot, and made these points. I was actually texting Dr. Hogue during the hearing, saying, I'm sending you the testimony of the one doctor on the ataxia drug. But there's no reason for this. I'm the champion of right to try. We had to water it down so that Big Pharma wouldn't sabotage it. The most important part of right to try is its title, but it's way weaker than what it should be. So, hopefully we can get bipartisan support to strengthen right to try so that these bureaucrats, these faceless bureaucrats who just want to say no, can't. They have to give these people with rare diseases, the right to try these therapies. They have informed consent. Unlike the COVID injection, these families know what the end state is of their disease. Generally, they're terminal, early death, a lot of suffering in between. They're willing to take a chance. They want hope. They want freedom. And our federal agencies aren't allowing them that hope and freedom. And I think it's just it's shameful, quite honestly. And I'm going to fight like you know what to overturn these two. Was it complete resolution or complete? What I can't remember. It's one of those bureaucratic terms that mean nothing. It's just a no letter. It's their It's literally a death. It's literally a death sentence. It's sick.
Yeah, based on technicalities. And I had a family member who had ataxia that later was diagnosed as ALS, and of course he died from it. And he would have tried anything like that, and we would have encouraged it. It's really a shameful situation. So thanks for sharing that with the public. If there's anything we can do, please let us know on that front. What about, is there going to be accountability for Fauci, Ralph Baric, Deborah Birx? Is that on the horizon, or is that a pipe dream?
I sure would like to see it. I know Rand Paul's, that's kind of, one of his primary focuses. They'll be able to hide behind bureaucratic power and, we try to do the best and, incomplete information. So I'm sure it'd be very difficult to convict them of any crime. And from my standpoint, I just want to expose them for what they did. I mean, Fauci being the head of NIAID there for so many years, offering so many of these grants, funding gain of function research, he knew he lied about it. Rel Barrick knew what he was doing. Peter Daszak, I mean, these guys know. I was never that much into investigating the origin of COVID because to me it was so obvious so early in 2020, talking to computational biologists and stuff. Said, no, this is the furin cleavage site, the spike protein. I mean, this was man-made. This was engineered. How it was released from the Wuhan lab, hard to say. But this is the fault of Fauci and Barrick and Daszak and the Bat Lady. And again, we know it. Hopefully, to me, exposure is the first part of accountability.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you don't buy the bat soup narrative like a lot of us. So tell me what else you'd like our audience to know, especially Californians who are oppressed by mandates. We have so many medical refugees who've left the state to educate their kids safely. Is there anything else you'd like us to know?
Well, what we need more doctors like McCulloch, like Corey, like Ryan Cole, like Dr. Sharansky, like the doctors that testified before this committee. They're all taking a risk. They'll all probably be attacked. Their licenses may all be threatened. But if there are more doctors who are willing to speak up and talk about what they are seeing, quit hiding behind your institution. I understand the risk it is, but if more of them step forward, it won't be risky. It'll be undeniable what's happening. But until more doctors are willing to do that, it's going to be very difficult to fix the system. So again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical researcher. I don't think you are either. So again, we're less effective because of that. We need more doctors who have that, that gravitas of being a medical professional. They can't, otherwise people just, well, what do you know? You're not a doctor. I know. So we need doctors to step up the plate. So that's my plea. It's been my plea for a number of years. I remember looking in the camera when Dale Bigtree interviewed me, and I made a plea to doctors. You can't just let a few of your brethren, your few of your colleagues to bear the full brunt of telling the truth. We need more doctors to step up the plate. When they see something, they've got to say something. They've got to inform the public about what they know.
I agree. It brings to mind that Martin Niemöller poem. They're letting those few doctors, get hung up in public, and the rest of them are hiding behind them, and that's not fair. So many more of them know what's going on, and they need to come out of that closet. I think you're absolutely right. I encourage that. And and as for credentials, I'm not a doctor. I might be considered an investigative reporter, medical freedom activist, but I don't have the authority, and this whole game is played with appeals to authority. So we definitely have to fix that. And finally, what can we do as Californians or just the general public to help you in your endeavors? Is there anything specific coming up, or just what is general support that we can offer you?
Well, again, lobby your members of Congress, state, local, federal officials, and talk to your doctor and encourage your doctor to become informed. Listen, the body is an incredibly complex organism, right? No doctor knows everything about the body. I mean, they specialize in different things, and they don't know what another specialist knows about something they're not specializing in. So again, you can't. I love doctors. They saved my daughter's life. Okay, they save lives all the time. They're dedicated they dedicate their lives to saving lives. They have to understand the gravity of the situation, though, and so ask your listeners to talk to their doctors to, first of all, get educated, open up their eyes to things like vaccine injury, and then once their eyes are open, they're not going to be able to close them. And then once their eyes are open, they're also going to have to speak out. But again, they can form groups quietly and all come out together. That'd probably be the most effective way of doing it anyway.
I agree. That's great advice. So are there any last words you want to leave with our audience, especially Californians?
Well, again, I just want to thank you for everything you've done. You've done an excellent job. And like I say, neither one of us are doctors, but I think we're doing a pretty good job of, I guess, being willing to be vilified in the media, that type of thing, but just trying to honestly convey the truth as we see it, as we believe it and stuff. So Again, I appreciate you doing that. I appreciate anybody who's willing to do that.
Thank you so much, Senator Johnson. It has been an absolute pleasure and so enlightening to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for everything you do.
Well, thank you for everything you do. Have a great day.
We are so happy to have as our prime sponsor, Mish International, Northern California's acclaimed specialists in both rare coins and gold and silver investments. Our friend and supporter, Robert Mish, the same principal that started the company in 1963, is still there daily, offering 63 years of experience, expertise, integrity, reliability, and fair pricing, whether you're buying or selling. When you have business to do with precious metals, you'll always be treated well at Mish International. Call him at the number below or visit his website at mishinternational.com. That's MISH international.com. Tell them Alex sent you.